Ambassador Elena Vance stood alone in the center of the Galactic Council chamber. The room was enormous. 12 platforms rose around her in a circle, each one holding the representatives of the oldest and most powerful species in the known galaxy. Strange lights floated in the air above her. The walls were made of some kind of living crystal that changed color with the mood of the room. Right now it was a dull, bored gray. She had stood here 6 times before. Each time she had come with warnings. Each time she had been ignored. The Veloxy representative leaned forward. High Arbiter Zilthan was ancient, even by the standards of his species. His body was thin and tall, covered in silver scales that caught the light. His eyes were completely black, and when he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like wind through a cave. "Ambassador Vance," he said slowly, "you come before us again with the same concerns. The Krevery Empire has expanded its borders. They have claimed 3 systems that your species also claims. This is not unusual. Borders shift. Species adapt. This is the way of the galaxy." Elena kept her voice calm. She had practiced this many times. "High Arbiter, the Krevery have not simply claimed these systems. They have announced their intention to remove human colonists from 3 populated worlds. New Hyderabad has 40 million people. Haven's Rest has 12 million. Port Sean has 8 million. These are not empty rocks. These are our homes." A sound came from one of the upper platforms. It was something like laughter, but deeper and more cruel. The Krevery ambassador. A massive creature covered in black armor-like skin rose to his full height. Warlord Speaker Thexran was nearly 3 m tall. 4 arms emerged from his shoulders, each ending in claws that could cut through steel. "Homes can be moved," Thexran said. His voice was rough, like stones grinding together. "Your people are soft. They will leave when we arrive. They always do. Every species runs from the Krevery. It is the natural order." Elena turned to face him. She was small compared to him. All humans were small compared to most council species. But she did not look away. "We have asked for diplomatic discussions. We have proposed shared resource agreements. We have offered compromises on every point. Your empire has refused all of these." Vexran showed his teeth. It was not a smile. "Why would we negotiate for what we can simply take?" High Arbiter Zilthan raised one thin hand. "Peace, Warlord Speaker. Ambassador Vance, the Council has studied your species carefully since first contact 2 centuries ago. We have observed your history, your culture, your behavior. We understand humans quite well." Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. "And what do you believe you understand?" Zilthan's black eyes seemed to look through her. "Humans fear war. This is obvious in everything you create. Your literature is filled with stories about the horrors of combat. Your soldiers return from battle with damaged minds. You build monuments to those who die in conflict. Your children are taught that violence is wrong. Your leaders sign treaty after treaty, seeking peace above all else." He paused, and the chamber was completely silent. "You are a traumatized species." Zilthan continued. "Somewhere in your past, you experienced violence so terrible that it broke something inside you. Now you cannot fight. The very idea of war fills you with dread. This is not an insult, Ambassador. It is simply an observation. Many species are not suited for conflict. There is no shame in this." Elena stood very still. Around her, representatives from other species nodded their agreement. She could see it in their eyes. They had already made their decision. They thought they understood humanity. They understood nothing. "High Arbiter," she said carefully, "I must tell you that your analysis is incomplete. We have studied you for 200 years. Zilthan replied, "Our analysis is thorough. You have studied our words. You have not studied our history." There was a moment of silence. Then Dexran laughed again. That deep grinding sound. "What history? We know your history. You fought small wars on your small planet. You killed each other with primitive weapons. Then you discovered space travel. And you stopped fighting. Because you are afraid." Elena turned to face him. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes made the Krevery ambassador pause for just a moment. We did not stop fighting because we are afraid, she said quietly. We stopped fighting because we had to, because if we had continued, there would have been no one left. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative. In the last great war on our world, we killed 80 million of our own kind. Not over centuries, over 6 years, we developed weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single flash of light. We built machines that could kill thousands from the other side of the planet, and we used them. The chamber was silent now. Even Thexan had stopped laughing. After that war, Elena continued, we looked at what we had become. We looked at the ashes of our cities and the graves of our children, and we made a choice. We chose to build a different future. We wrote poetry about peace because we had seen too much war. We built monuments to the dead because we never wanted to forget the cost. We taught our children that violence is wrong because we did not want them to become what we had been. She paused. But we did not forget how to fight. We simply chose not to. Zilthan waved one thin hand dismissively. Pretty words, Ambassador. But words do not win wars. The Council has made its decision. The Krev-Veri Empire will be granted territorial adjustment rights to the disputed systems. Your colonists will be given 60 days to evacuate. This matter is closed. Elena looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Very well, she said. I will inform my government of your decision. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. At the door, she paused and looked back. Arbite, she said. I want you to remember something. When this is over, I want you to remember that I came here 7 times. I asked for help. I offered peace. I warned you about what would happen, and you did not listen. Then she was gone. Zilthan turned to his fellow council members. A dramatic exit, he observed, but meaningless. The humans will complain and then they will leave their colonies. They have no choice. They cannot fight the KTH. Very Ran rose from his platform, already planning his invasion. 60 million soft, frightened humans. They would flee at the first sight of his warships. It would be the easiest conquest in Kreth-Veri history across the galaxy in a bunker buried deep beneath the mountains of a small European country. A secure communication arrived from Ambassador Vance. Military officials gathered around a screen. They read her message in silence. The Council has refused all diplomatic options. The Krevi have been given legal authority to take our colonies. They believe we will not fight. They believe we cannot fight. The highest-ranking officer in the room was Fleet Admiral Marcus Chin. He was 63 years old. He had spent his entire career hoping he would never have to open the sealed orders that waited in the vault behind him. For 80 years, those orders had remained unopened. Every admiral before him had passed them to the next, praying they would never be needed. He walked to the vault. He entered the codes that only he knew. The heavy door swung open and he removed a single folder marked with one word. Prometheus. He opened it. Inside were 2 words. No mercy. Admiral Chun closed his eyes for a moment. Then he began making calls. Across human space in secret shipyards, hidden in the darkness between stars. Lights began to turn on. Engines that had been cold for decades began to warm. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come received a single message. It was time. Warlord Kthrax stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. Around him, 400 warships of the Kree-Veri Third Expansion Fleet moved through space in perfect formation. They were the pride of the Empire. Each vessel bristling with weapons that had brought death to 11 species before the colony world of New Hyderabad hung in the darkness ahead of them. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. A beautiful world. Soon it would belong to the Krevar. Scan the planet, Kthrax ordered. His tactical officer worked the controls. A moment later, confusion crossed his armored face. Warlord, the cities are empty. Thermal scans show no significant population centers. The humans appear to have already evacuated. Kthrax felt a wave of disgust. He had hoped for at least a small fight, some entertainment before claiming his prize. Cowards, he said. They run before we even arrive. The Council was right about them. Warlord, I am detecting minimal orbital defenses, 3 automated platforms, no warships, no resistance. This was almost insulting. Thrax had brought 400 ships to conquer a world defended by 3 platforms. He would be mocked when he returned home. There was no glory in conquering an empty planet. Destroy the platforms and begin landing operations. He ordered, claim this world for the Empire. The fleet moved into orbital position. The 3 defense platforms were destroyed in seconds. Thrax watched the explosions with boredom. This was not war. This was cleanup. Then his sensor officer spoke again, and this time there was something strange in his voice. Warlord, a vessel is approaching from behind the planet's moon. 1 vessel. Keith turned. What kind of ship would face a fleet of 400 alone? The image appeared on the main display. Thrax stared at it. The ship was old, very old. Its hull was covered in scars and patches. It looked like something that should have been scrapped centuries ago. It was not even 1/10 the size of his flagship. They send this against us. Thrax laughed. One ancient piece of garbage. Are they trying to insult us? A communication signal came through. Thrax nodded and a human voice filled the bridge. Crethvery Fleet. This is Captain James Okonkwo of the Huns. Remember, you have entered human space with hostile intent. You have been warned multiple times through diplomatic channels. This is your final opportunity to withdraw. Leave now and you will not be harmed. Stay and you will be destroyed. Silence hung on the bridge for a moment. Then Thrax began to laugh around him. His officers joined in. The laughter spread through the fleet as the message was shared. Destroy them. 1 ship threatening 400 human captain. Keith replied, I have conquered 11 worlds. My fleet has never known defeat. You stand before me with 1 broken ship and threaten me. He leaned forward. I will enjoy making an example of you. I understand, Captain Okonkwo replied. His voice was calm, almost sad. I had to try. What happens next is your choice. Keith gave the order. Destroy that ship. 50 Crethvery vessels opened fire simultaneously. Weapons that could crack planets reached out toward the tiny human vessel. The Remember should have been vaporized instantly. Instead, it exploded on its own. From inside, for a moment, Thrax was confused. Had the humans destroyed themselves rather than face his weapons? How pathetic. Then his tactical officer screamed a warning. The Remember had not been a ship. It had been a weapon delivery system. In the microsecond before it detonated, it had launched 12 objects. These objects were small, no larger than a Thvari warrior. They were made of ultra-dense material, and they were traveling at 40% of the speed of light. At that velocity, mass became death. Each projectile carried more energy than a nuclear weapon. They crossed the distance to the Crethvery fleet. In an instant, 200 ships ceased to exist. There was no explosion that Thrax could see. Noreki. The ships were simply there one moment and gone the next, erased from reality by impacts that released more energy than stars. The shock waves from the strikes tore through the remaining fleet, damaging another 50 vessels. Thrax grabbed his command console as his ship shook. Alarms screamed around him. Half his fleet was gone. Half. In less than a heartbeat. What happened? He roared. What happened? Before anyone could answer, his sensor officer spoke again. The fear in his voice was something Thrax had never heard from a Crethvery warrior. Warlord. New contacts emerging from the outer system. Many contacts. How many? The officer's claws trembled as he read the display. I count 4,000 vessels. No more. They are still emerging. 5,006. Warlord. There are more ships appearing every second. Thrax stared at the tactical display. It was filling with red markers. Human ships, thousands of them. They were coming from the darkness between planets, from hidden positions in asteroid fields, from places where no fleet should have been able to hide. These ships looked nothing like the ancient vessel that had sacrificed itself. These were weapons of war. Sleek, angular, covered in armor, and bristling with guns. They moved in perfect coordination, spreading out to surround what remained of his fleet. A new communication signal came through. Thrax accepted it with numb fingers. A human face appeared on the screen. An older man with gray hair and cold eyes. He wore a military uniform covered in medals. "I am Fleet Admiral Marcus Chun of the United Earth Navy." The human said, "Your fleet has been neutralized.